Here are 5 startup mistakes I see nonprofit founders make all the time. Let's get into it. Hey, this is Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. So I help people start their nonprofits and raise money for their new nonprofits. I have a small membership community to help people raise money. If you'd like to join the community, just comment "I want to join" below and I'll send you the link to sign up. So my goal is always to encourage nonprofit founders because, first of all, sometimes people discourage folks from starting nonprofits. And there's also a lot of noise about, well, nonprofits are corrupt or nonprofits are this or that. But I really do believe there is a group of people who are seeing things in their community that they don't like, that they want to change, and they believe that they're the people and this is the moment to make that change. So this channel is to support people like that, to support people who are doing the good stuff but need help to officially create the organization and raise money to run the organization. So I see certain mistakes that nonprofit founders make because I work with them all the time, and I just wanted to share that with you today. The first one is not having clear boundaries around your money and your time. Okay, I had to get this one out the way. So what's going to happen when you start your nonprofit, I see most people do this, is that they finance the nonprofit from their own bank accounts. They feel like, well, this is my dream and I need to invest in my dream. If I'm serious about this, I need to give money, I need to give my time. And that's exactly right. But one thing you have to remember is that as a nonprofit founder, you're not necessarily the owner. So you don't have any legal entitlements to the organization. It's just that you're the founder, it's your original idea, and you are gathering people to serve on a board who are then going to make decisions, right? So if other people are going to be in control and are making decisions for something that you're personally invested in, then just understand that you don't have control necessarily over how those investments are used. It's like any other donor. Once a donor gives money to the organization, it's up to the organization to do the right thing and use the money the way that they need to in order to accomplish the mission. So essentially, when you're giving your money and your time, you're like any other donor or volunteer. But what I see a lot of people do, especially in the beginning, because they believe so much into this, they put all their money into it or they put all their time. And this is just my opinion, that when you set up that precedent, when your board members watch you do that, then I've seen a lot of people feel like, well, she's doing that, this is her thing, I'm just here to follow her. I'll give money, I guess, when she asks me, or I give my time when she asks me, but this is her thing or this is his thing, and they're putting all their time into this, and I'm just here to support. And it sets up the feeling like, oh, well, I'm just supporting her project or his project. And it does not give off the idea that this is a public organization, that we're in this together. We all have equal standing at the table and we all should be equally investing, at least at a minimum, right? We all should be making a minimum investment of our money and our time. But too many times the founder is the one who's doing everything. And you got to be really clear for yourself when you're going into this, how much money you're willing to give and how much time you're willing to give. And at some point, you got to draw the line and say no more. I've heard of people going into debt. I've heard people neglecting other things in their personal lives, sacrificing things that they could do with their family, sacrificing time with their family for this mission. And that is very admirable. But I do not believe that you should sacrifice yourself for your mission, that you still have to be here, you still have to be whole for your mission. And here's the thing, you are a leader. So people are watching you and they're watching you make those sacrifices, and they believe that every time you come to the table, it has to be from a place of lack. And so I want you to just be really clear when you're going into this. How much money am I willing to invest before I start getting other people involved to invest alongside me? And how much time am I willing to invest? And how much will I give until I begin to get other people to invest their time as well? The second mistake I see people making is not accepting early on that they're actually a leader. Most people that I encounter who start their nonprofits are doing it not because they want to be an executive director necessarily. They're doing it because they want to help somebody. They're doing it because They've either done the work for years and never had their own organization, or they just have a burning desire to help somebody and they want to start the organization to get access to funding to do it. And then there are some people on top of that who want to lead their organization. They want to have their own. Just because you have your own thing, and side note, just know that as a nonprofit, it's not your own, meaning you don't have ownership rights to it. But let's just go with it. You know what I mean. You want to feel like you own something, like this is your idea. But you have to realize that means you're responsible for pushing it. Because just because an idea exists, just because you're doing good work, it doesn't mean that people are going to follow you. And it doesn't mean that you're going to automatically get support. So you have to stand in your role as a leader. You have to articulate the vision and the mission for your nonprofit and talk about it wherever you go. You have to learn as you go. You have to read and study. You have to find mentors. You have to grow yourself personally and professionally. And you just have to assert yourself as a leader. You have to speak up. You have to have an opinion. You got to have a perspective about things. And you have to be in the limelight. In order to really push this forward, you can't be afraid to be in that position. But so many times I encounter people who are not there yet. They're like, oh, I don't want to be in the spotlight. I just want to help somebody. Or, no, I don't really want to do all of that. I just really am trying to help people. But the one thing you got to remember is, as the founder, you had the initial idea. You're gathering people around an idea, and they may have wanted to do something, but they weren't the ones who had the idea. They weren't the ones who decided to do all this. They are literally following your lead, but you have to stand in your role as a leader. You can't be afraid to push back or to challenge people, right? You can't be afraid in meetings to say the things that sometimes people don't want to say when your board members aren't engaged or when they need to give money, right? There are things that you have to do that are going to make you uncomfortable. You're going to have to ask for money. You're going to have to meet people you're not used to talking to. And that is going to be developing you personally and professionally as a leader. And a lot of times people resist that in the beginning. I believe that in that process, people do get there. But the earlier you realize and accept that you are the leader of the organization, the better your transition will be, the better your process will be as you start your organization. The third mistake I've seen is people being afraid to speak up. And I kind of mentioned this in the last point, but let me go a little bit deeper on this. Again, I encounter a lot of nonprofit founders who are introverts like me, who don't really want to talk in front of people, or you may want to talk and you're okay talking, but you don't necessarily want to be opinionated, or you don't want to ruffle any feathers, or you don't want to say something negative that may be perceived as negative, right? But here's the thing. You're starting a nonprofit because there's something missing. You're starting a nonprofit because there's a gap somewhere. So already out the gate, your services are the response or the answer to something that's not happening. And a lot of times, if people knew, right, if people knew or understood that it wasn't happening, then it would get addressed. So a lot of your role is educating people on the fact that this isn't right, or this isn't working, or we need to do better, or there's a gap here. We need to provide this because this isn't going well, right? So, I mean, I'm talking in generalities, but I'm thinking of one of my followers who provides shoes for children in school, right? And kids are coming to school with holes. This is in Chicago. Shout out to Fran. But kids are coming to school with holes in their shoes. How are we in a society where kids can't even have shoes coming to school? Like, kids today in 2024 have holes in their shoes. That's a problem. So your organization, if you do that, is set up to address the issue of kids not coming to school prepared. Well, that's a statement, right? That's saying to people, why are we allowing this to happen? How can this happen, right? And it's more than just individuals, because I know some people will be like, well, what's wrong with that parent, or what's wrong with that community? No, it's a bigger issue that you're commenting on, that people can't afford to send their kids with well-dressed to school or ready and prepared. That's a bigger statement that needs to be addressed and talked about, right? So as a nonprofit founder, you got to be that person to make those statements. Kids should come to school fully prepared. Kids need to come to school ready to learn. And when they're ready to learn, they excel. And that's the problem. They don't have the essentials of what they need to be able to excel. And this is why we're seeing the issues we're seeing in our public school system, right? And so that ruffles feathers for some people. For some people, they don't want to hear that. They just want to hear that all is going well. Or for some people, they don't know. They don't know it's that bad. Or they live in an environment where they're not exposed to other people who are different from them. And so they just don't understand. And so your role is to educate them about that. Your role is to ring the alarm, because people can't support you or get behind you unless they know there's something they need to support. So your job is to speak up, and it's going to feel uncomfortable because people are rude and people aren't necessarily ready to hear. Well, some people are rude, but people aren't necessarily ready to hear some of the things you may need to say. And you got to prepare yourself for that and just keep pushing. But I say all of that to say you really need to be comfortable with speaking up and saying your piece and saying and exposing what you see around you, because there are people who don't know and don't understand. The fourth mistake I see founders make is feeling like you're not enough. And I'm going to put a slash to that, or not being audacious enough. So this is what I want to remind you. I want to ground you in this as a startup founder. You are literally starting an idea from scratch. You are literally starting in an organization that didn't exist yesterday or last year or whatever. And now you're launching and trying to create a whole organization, a whole set of services, get a board together, raise money, all the things. That is not easy. Now, as easy as it may seem for me to say that whole process and that development, the phases you got to go through to get to where you want to go to grow your organization, is not easy. So it requires in you as a founder to be bold. It requires you to be audacious. It's not enough to just say, well, I'm going to say a little bit and put a request out there in social media, and I'm just going to wait for the people to come to me. Or I'm not going to necessarily meet people because I'm nervous about that. I'm not going to say much about my organization. People should just see what I'm posting, and that should be enough, and they should come to me. And I'm here to tell you that's not enough. That's part of it. You need to be marketing, and you need to be always having the information out there on your website, on your social media, but that's passive. You got to be direct. You have to be assertive and, dare I say, audacious. If that's the word you want to take away from this video, take that word. You have to be audacious. You can't be afraid to say certain things, and you can't be afraid to reach out to certain people, right? I encounter so many people who, for example, let's take sponsorship, who want to have sponsors from corporations, but they're so afraid to reach out. They're so afraid to write that initial email because they're already thinking in their head, well, they're going to think I'm begging if I'm reaching out to them, or they're going to think we're this tiny organization. Why would they pay any attention to us? And they're going to think negatively upon me because they're going to think I'm going to do something with the money if I ask. And they create these narratives in their head, and they're already addressing or creating responses to a question they never asked. And that mindset and that thinking really does hinder people. If you can relate to that, write that in the chat below so you can find your community, because I've encountered so many people like that, right? But in response to that, let me just say, you're going to feel those things. You're going to feel like I'm begging. You're going to feel like I'm probably doing too much. I'm asking people for money all the time. They're going to be like, stop asking me for money. You're going to feel all those things. That's natural. But the bold person pushes past those feelings. The bold person leans into the messiness. I've been kind of embracing that approach lately. It may feel messy. It just may feel uncomfortable, but you got to lean in to it and embrace it and just go with it, right? A bold person doesn't let what they think somebody is thinking of them stop what their plan and their mission is. And this is something that doesn't just come naturally. I have found that people who are nonprofit founders, they're naturally helpers, and people who are naturally helpers sometimes like to be in the background. They don't necessarily want to be the one saying the thing that's going to irritate people or to even ask, right? But it takes getting over that parts of your personality, not letting it hinder you from making progress. So I encourage you to be bold, to be audacious, even when it's scary. The last mistake is really important. It's when you don't invest enough time in people. I say this a lot. If you watch any of my videos here on YouTube, you're going to hear me say that this is people work. And sometimes when I say that, it's mostly in reference to your board, because your biggest frustration, I would say in your early years and probably just generally, is going to be your board. You're going to always feel like they're not doing enough, they're not engaged enough, they're not committed enough. Those feelings are going to naturally come to you, first of all, because they may not be as fired up or as passionate as you about the mission. They may not externalize it, or it may not show right in their actions. They may be, but it just may not come out in the way you think it should come out. So you're going to get really frustrated at times with your board. There are going to be times when you need to just dismiss some people, or some people have to make hard decisions about whether they can commit. And it's no different with staff. It's no different with volunteers. It's no different with donors, where sometimes donors just don't have it or are not interested in giving this year. And it's so frustrating when people don't do what you just want them to do. Right? Can't you just do what I want you to do? But what I want you to understand is that when you're dealing with humans, you're dealing with human nature, things are never in a straight line. It's never just because you want this to happen, then this naturally happens. You have to invest time. And under all of this is just the importance of relationship. When you're building relationships with people, it's not that you want something from them and then you walk away. You invest time. You understand what their needs are. You understand what makes them tick, what's important to them. It's meeting them where they are. It's providing value to them. And then when you invest in people, then they tend to reciprocate. Now, it may not always be in the way you want it to be, but that's why you need to really examine yourself and how you view people and what you think their expectations are, and just manage those expectations. Just know that people are going to people and life is going to happen. Some people are going to say they want to do something and then they're going to fall off. And then sometimes people will surprise you. They're going to be disengaged and not committed, and then one day they're going to wake up and be like your best friend, right? So what I'm trying to say is that you just have to invest time in people. A lot of what we assume about how people show up is not the case. You don't know what's on that person's mind, what's going on in their family life, what's going on in their professional life, which impacts how they're showing up to a board meeting, for example, where they're volunteering, right? And they're not necessarily getting any money back from this, right? So that may impact how they show up and how they react to you. And also, most times I find that board members are clueless about what they're supposed to do. So it really has nothing to do with you and slighting you. They don't know how to show up. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They don't know they're legally responsible for the organization. So investing in people means investing in educating them, investing in understanding where they're coming from, investing in listening to them and talking to them, right? Investing in the time to talk and discuss and come to decisions and collaborate. All of that is messy and it takes time, but you investing time in doing that will pay off so well, whether it's doing that with your clients, listening and meeting your clients where they are, whether it's with your donors, whether it's with your staff, your volunteers, all around. So just embrace early on that you have to invest time into people, invest time into building relationships, and it will pay off. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you need help with your nonprofit, you can always visit me at bossonabudget.com. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I will see you in the next video.